You're live.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Council. I'd like to call this regular council meeting of May 9th, 2023 to order with adoption of the agenda. And I'd like the agenda to be adopted as amended to replace page 5 of the consolidated statement of operations under agenda item 11A. So Ms. Floyd has just given you all the hard copy of that page. That's part of the financial consolidated statement of operations. So if someone want to make that motion for me, please. Councillor Stapener, seconded by Councillor Cherry. All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting of April 18th. Someone want to make that motion for me? Councillor Devlin, seconded by Councillor Lucio. All in favor? Motion's carried. Any business arising from those minutes? Seeing none, I'll just move on to announcements from the mayor. So it's been 2 or 3 weeks since we've been in this room. So we had the SILGA conference in Vernon, where we joined our colleagues from other cities for basically going over things and listening to what's new in the world of politics. And then last Thursday, we opened the multi-use pathway up in Arrow Heights. Glad to see so many people out, council staff, and lots of students from the Arrow Heights School, as well as the Bike to Work people. It was good, and Councillor Cherry and Councillor Palmer were there, both under their own power. Councillor Palmer on his bike and Councillor Cherry on his legs. and then after that, Councillor Cherry, Director Donato, and myself were invited to Columbia Park Elementary for the grade 4's presentation on diversity and inclusion in playgrounds. And we actually got to see what grade 4s think of for modeling in playgrounds. And it was pretty awesome to see some of the designs the kids had come up with. And it was nice for that. So moving on to 9A bylaws. Someone want to put that motion on the table for me, please? Councillor Devlin.
I'll move that the 2023 tax rate bylaw number 2352 be adopted.
Seconder for that motion, please. Councillor Lucel. Any discussion on the motion? Councillor Palmer.
So is there a presentation by Angie Spencer?
There will be a presentation on the consolidated financial
Oh, okay,
statements.
sorry. Okay, yeah, I'm ahead of myself. Yeah, okay, good. Thank you.
All right. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Moving on to 11A staff reports, consolidated financial statements. So Ms. Spencer, you have a presentation for us.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will share my screen if that's okay.
Yes, thank you.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Angie Spencer. I'm a partner with BDO, and I have been engaged to conduct the annual audit for City of Revelstoke. So we have completed the audit of the financial statements subject to your review and approval today. So I'll just go through a high-level overview of the financial statements and be happy to answer any questions related to the audit at that point. So in my audit opinion, which is on page 2 and 3, we have conducted the audit in accordance with public sector accounting standards. We've issued what's considered a clean or unqualified audit opinion, meaning that the financial statements as presented are free of material misstatement. So in terms of the, not sure how to get, there we go. So the consolidated statement of financial position, I'm on page 4 now. This is a snapshot of all of the assets and liabilities of the City of Revelstoke as at December 31st. Financial assets came in at 52.2 million, up from 46.2 in the prior year. Some notable changes, cash and equivalents decreased during the year. Some of those were shifted into portfolio investments to earn a higher rate of interest with the increased interest rates. So you'll see here where portfolio investments increased from 29 million up to 34.2 million. Accounts receivable also increased from 3.2 up to 4.2. This was timing of some grants receivable that were, claimed for but received subsequent to year end for ongoing projects. The investment in RCFC, this represents, of course, it's a wholly owned entity of the city. So 7.3 million represents the retained earnings of that entity as at December 31st. Investment of RCSEC has been written down to $1 given the deficit that it's currently in. In terms of liabilities, total liabilities came in at 29.6, very similar to prior year, with ongoing payables being consistent. Deferred revenue increased over prior year, 7.9 million to 9.2. Note 6 discloses what that deferred revenue. So this would represent things like the DCCs outstanding or any conditional grants that are received that have stipulations attached on what they must be spent on. So some of those grants will be, spent in the following year when those projects are undertaken. Long-term debt continues to be paid down and is currently at 11.6 million. Tangible capital assets, that increased from 88.6 million up to 90.8. So about $5.3 million worth additions, notably related to sewer upgrades, water treatment plant, and significant roads and bridges. And that was offset by amortization for the year. So accumulated surplus, which represents the assets less liabilities of City of Revelstoke, is at 114 million at the end of 2022. So I'm moving on to page 5. Page 5 is the consolidated statement of operations. So this is a summary of all the revenues less the expenditures of the city for the fiscal year ended December 31st, 2022. Total revenues came in at 35.6 million, up over prior year and slightly over budget as well. Some notable shifts there. There was grant revenue related to some ongoing projects that was received and spent during the year. A lot of capital projects included in that. RCFC had a really good year in terms of their income. So 1.7 million was recognized as revenue related to that increase in value. In terms of expenditures increased from prior year, but was very consistent with budget at 27.3 million. Some notable changes there, some increases in general government with increase in salaries, et cetera, with new staff being onboarded. Transportation services was up quite a bit over last year with the heavy snowfall last year. There was additional costs related to plowing and, of course, general increases in gas and transportation costs. And then I think that's all I had on expenditure. So total annual surplus, that's revenue less expenditures for the year, came in at 8.3 million, noting that that does not include the capital additions that have been moved to the balance sheet for financial reporting purposes. So the following pages I will not go through in detail. Those are, the notes to the financial statements and that are required under public sector accounting standards, and they just provide more detail to the balances that I've gone over on the balance sheet and income statements. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that there might be on those financials at all.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Palmer?
Thank you, Mayor Souls. Thank you, Ms. Spencer, for the report again. RCEC, as the representative of the shareholder, should we be concerned?
I have had some discussions with management on that. So from a accounting perspective for the city, it is considered to be a government business enterprise, which means that it is supposed to sustain itself and be profitable on its own, independent of the city. it is on the radar, and I have had discussions both with the mayor and the board of RCEC and management, just to make sure that, there is a plan in place going forward to, note whether it is able to sustain itself, or whether or not that's ultimately going to be a responsibility of the city, in which case we would have to reevaluate how that's accounted for in the city's financial statements, effectively consolidating those results in.
And then just a little bit further on that. So my understanding, it's an arm's length corporation, so that's where it has its independence. What liability comes back to the city directly? Like when you're talking about our role, if there's a change in that, so what liability is there to us directly, or is it because if there's a problem from a financial perspective, is it independent, or is that more of a legal question?
I think it's more of a question of looking forward to the operations of RCEC, who ultimately, if it's not able to turn around and, be able to cover its liabilities as they come due, who ultimately will be stepping in to cover those. And if it is the city, then, that might change the relationship in terms of how it's accounted for. But you're absolutely right. It is an independent entity and is considered its own, separate profitable business, which is why we use the equity method in terms of reflecting those results in the books of the city.
Right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councillor Orlando.
Yeah, Your Worship, thank you. And through the chair, obviously, I've noticed the same issue as Councillor Palmer. It's the RCEC has recorded a net loss of $442,000 for 2022, $438,000 in 2021, totaling about $880,000 in losses. My question is for clarification, while we have accounting expertise and the auditor here, could we get an explanation on sort of what the implication is for taxpayers? Is that loss contained within the corporation's books, or is that going to be supplemented by taxpayers? If we could just get a clear message on that.
Ms. Spencer, comment?
Through your worship. So right now, the way, as you see, it's only recorded at $1, and we're not continuing to pick up any losses in the City of Revelstoke's financial statements. So in the statement of operations, you'll see that there is no income or expenses picked up, although the disclosure, which I believe you're referring to, does provide more financial detail on that entity in the notes. And that would be a management discussion point regarding, the future viability and whether or not that has an impact on the taxpayers.
Ms. Moore, Mr. Weatherall, any comment from your perspective?
Through your worship, I just want to emphasize what Angie is saying, that it is currently at arm's length, but if RCEC is not able to increase its revenues and cover its costs, we will have to look at what that is going to look like in the future for the city. There is no specific plan in place right now, and I believe that Mr. Parliament and Mayor Sauls are working on organizing an RCEC board meeting for the beginning of June.
Correct. So we were able to, so for those of you who are aware, we were paying very high rates for insurance because of previous fires, $150K a year for insurance. We're able to get new insurance through MIA at 1/3 that cost. So that's helping quite a bit, and trying to move forward to see how we can increase our production. So we have a new operator for the last 6-8 months, and been able to, the whole plant is almost brand new because of the fire. So moving forward, same production and working with our community partners, plus Downey for our energy. Further comment, Councilor Orlando?
Yeah, your worship, this is that $880,000 loss is over just the past 2 years. I guess my concern is that and I'm wondering, is there other past debt that is on the books for the RCEC? And really, our job here is to, as councillors, is to look out for the interests of all our stakeholders, including our ratepayers. And my concern is that, with 2 years of significant losses and potential other liabilities, that will eventually come back to us. So I appreciate that our CEC is getting together to look into this, but I think as councillors who bear potential liabilities, the corporation bears potential liability, we need to have some more information on this. So, I'm prepared to put a motion to that further information be provided to the city and council so that we can better understand the risk to the role and the risk to taxpayers on this, and also have say in decisions going forward.
Okay, so is that a motion? Are you prepared to make a motion?
Yeah, I'm prepared to make the motion, and that is that staff bring forward a report on our CEC liability risk plans, and also invite the board as board of our CEC as well.
Okay, second for the motion. Councilor Cherry. Any discussion on the motion? Councilor Palmer.
Yeah, thank you, Mary Souls, and thank you, Councillor Orlando, for that. So as an arm's, I guess it's a question possibly going to the auditors, and maybe it's a legal question. So as an arm's length corporation, does that mean, I'll put it through to Angie, if I may, does that mean, what does that mean? From I guess from an accounting, because we're now asking staff to report on an arm's length thing, and I guess what sort of I'm wondering in the back of my mind whether it may be more appropriate to ask the board to for more accountability to the shareholder, essentially the city. It's much the same thing, but I'm wondering if it's really RCEC that needs to do that report. And so there's a kind of a question there, and I'm just wondering about that.
So Ms. Spencer, if you would like to weigh in, and then I'll make comment.
Yep, through your worship. I do agree that is likely more of a legal question in terms of, what is the responsibility in this situation of the sole shareholder should, the subsidiary become insolvent. I think, they are, even though they are independent from a management and board perspective, there are ties in terms of their ties within the community. That there likely is that question or needs some more exploration on, what role the city or responsibility the city has in terms of stepping in and covering any future losses.
And so, Mr. Parliament and I will have that meeting with the board. But I think, Councilor Palmer, you're correct. It's the board that should, or the management of RCEC that should prepare a report. And then that can come forward to council and basically explain the situation as to where they are at from there, if they have an explanation. And at least we can look at where we need to go and what we should be doing as we move forward. So I'm going to go back to the motion on the table. So Councilor Orlando, Councilor Cherry, would you like to alter your motion just to basically go to staff go to the board for that report?
Just for clarification, Your Worship, would you like this to come to council, or would you like to have a conversation at the committee of the whole first?
I think, I noted last year the $438,000 loss when I looked and read the books, and there was no comment. And then I see a similar, slightly higher loss this year, and it's a concern. So I need to get the books open and we need to get a discussion. How that happens, I'm not concerned. So if whatever way is deemed best, I understand concerns about liability, like, or potentially by, putting our feet on someone else's desk. So if it means they come to us and with an explanation, that's fine. I just think this needs to be addressed. We all need to understand what's going on, and we need to know what the plan is, and we need to understand a little bit more. So yeah, I'm happy to make that amendment the council city requests the board of RCEC or its representatives present to
Well,
the city,
we'll present to council in the city, and I need to just basically say, depending on the financial situation and if there is some privacy issues there, then that conversation may need to be in camera first before it comes to council. But if we can just come straight to council, then we'll do that. So, all right, now, Councilor Chair. Okay, so you guys are both in favor of that. Any further comments on that motion on the table? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. All right, so let's go back. Any further questions to Ms. Spencer regarding anything else in the consolidated statements? Councilor Palmer?
I'll put the motion on the table. The City of Revelstoke consolidated financial statements for the year ended December 31, 2022 be approved.
Second for that motion, please. Councilor Stapenhurst. Any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Spencer. Appreciate your time and your work.
Thanks very much. And I do want to take the opportunity to thank Shiana and Justin for their help with the audit process. It's always appreciated. Thank you.
All right, moving on to item 11B, license of occupation for Fish Hatchery. Do we have a presentation on this?
No presentation, Your Worship, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, so let's put the motion on the table and then we can ask some questions. Someone want to do that from Councilor Orlando?
Oh, sorry, is there a golf course rep? Okay, Councilor Chair, do you mind?
Councilor Chair, go
Sorry.
first.
Thanks. I move that notice be given to the city's intention to dispose of an interest in a portion of land, lot 22, section 33, township 23, range 2, west of the 6th meridian, Kootenai District Plan 9551, via license of occupation to BC Hydro for a 2-year term from June 1st, 2023 to September 30th, 2025, for the sum of $1 plus applicable taxes for the purpose of storing a mobile hatchery and related equipment.
Second for the motion, please. Councilor Devlin. Any discussion on the motion or questions for Ms. Rousseau regarding this? Councilor Palmer?
Thank you, Mayor Souls. So a couple of questions. One, I always get a little bit concerned, sort of these sort of good intention, and I'm in support of the motion, just for clarity, but I always get a little bit concerned what are unintended consequences. So on the time, so it's 2-year plus 2-year renewal, and is there ability within that contract for the city to opt, drive it, or is it totally with BC Hydro? Especially for the 2-year extension, I'm more interested.
The 3-year worship, typically these agreements, the renewal is contingent based on both parties agreeing.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that's great, because it's just, looking at what the long-term plan, there's a lot of pedestrian traffic, including in that area that's, it's actually a very valuable piece of land aesthetically. If it was cleaned up, it's a bit of a mess in there right now. And I guess that's part of my concern. And there's more and more people using that as a corridor for a path year round, essentially. And where that might be going in the future as we see more and more pressure. So that's kind of where my interest was. But I think that's satisfactory with that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other comments, questions from council? Seeing none, I will call a question. All those in favor? No, motion's carried unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Russo. Moving on to item C, Citizen Services Courthouse Lease Agreement. Someone want to put that motion on the table, and then we can discuss that. Councillor Devlin.
I'll move that notice be given of the city's intention to dispose of an interest in portion of land. On the right one, yes. Lot 1, Section 34, Township 23, Range 2, west of the 6th Meridian, Kootenai District Plan, NEP 19536. Be a license of occupation to BC Hydro for a 2-year term, June 1st, 2023 to May 31st, 2028, for the sum of $223,314.50, plus applicable proportionate share of taxes to accommodate provincial government offices and related services and data room space.
Second for the motion, please. Councillor Russo. Any discussion on this? So basically, that is the what we call the government agent's office in the courthouse. Is that correct?
Through your worship, yes, that is Service BC at the courthouse. And just a point of clarification, I see a typo in the agenda. This is actually for a 5-year term. My apologies.
And they've been in that building for many, many years. So appropriate to carry on. Any further questions or discussion from Councillor Orlando?
Your worship, first question is, do we need to change the resolution if it's a 5-year term, not a 2-year term?
Ms. Wood?
Councillor Orlando, thank you. I think it's probably could be a friendly amendment. The term that Councillor Devlin read out, June 1st, 2023 to May 31st, 2028, is actually a 5-year term, so it could kind of be a friendly amendment.
Okay, you guys are okay with that? Mover and second?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so we'll just change that. Thank you, Councillor Orlando. Any further discussions?
Your worship.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, through the chair, I'm wondering, has there been any changes to this lease compared to last time, such as different rooms or different space? And the second part of that question is, has this amount increased in terms of, with inflation, with rents going up? I'm just seeking a little bit more background.
Ms. Rousseau, comment?
Through your worship, no, the lease area has not changed. So the proposal for this lease is to occupy the same area that has previously been occupied. In terms of the amount for the lease, it's adjusted slightly in terms of the price per square footage to be aligned with the market rate. We did have our finance department review what was proposed. Under these leases where they are provincial, it is the province that drafts those leases and proposes the lease amount. Typically with the city or other leases, we would draft those agreements, but being that they're the parent government, they draft them, and we have the finance department review the lease amount, which they did and they were satisfied with.
Follow up, Councillor?
Your worship, no. Thank you.
Councillor Cherry.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just for clarification, is this a triple net lease where they take care of both property taxes, maintenance?
Ms. Rousseau, comment? I believe it is, yes.
Through your worship, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried. Thank you, Ms. Rousseau. Appreciate that. Moving on to item 11D, engineering, Revelstoke Airport Water Supply Upgrade Project. Mr. Black, any comments or presentation prior to me putting the motion on the table?
Your worship, no presentation today. Available for questions.
All right. Someone want to put the motion on the table for me, please? Councilor Stapleton.
Move that the expenditure of up to $100,000 to fund the city portion for upgrading the water main to the airport in support of the Ministry Force Revelstoke Fire Base be approved, and that a recommendation be forwarded to Columbia Shuswap Regional District, CSRD, Board of Directors, that up to $100,000 be allocated from the Economic Opportunity Fund for the city portion of the water main replacement, subject to an equal contribution from the CSRD.
Second for the motion, Councilor Lucero. Any discussion on this motion? Councilor Palmer.
I think Councillor Orlando, I have a whole bunch of questions, so Councillor Orlando, I have something to like.
Councilor Orlando.
Your worship, just one question. The city has policies regarding extending services outside of city limits. As I understand it, and I could be wrong, the airport is, and this facility is outside of city limits. So that is the focus of my question. Could, for example, this be, I don't know, this be brought within city limits, this portion of the facilities to increase our tax base and account for the services that we are providing. I sort of see the opposite here in funding an extension. I realize there's a benefit to having this facility here. It's great to see the initiative from the ministry, but nevertheless, we have to consider fairness to all of our ratepayers for this. And so maybe that's part of the project. I'd be happy to hear what it's
Mr. Black, do you want to weigh in before I leave?
Absolutely, your worship. The site is currently serviced by the city with a 2-inch water main that extends from Williamson Lake to the airport itself proper. Yes, in fact, the water main is located outside of the city limits. However, the airport is within city limits. So we are providing water to our own property.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, Councilor Palmer.
Thank you, Mayor Souls. So I do have a series of questions. I don't know if you have any further comments before I sort of weigh.
No, it's just, so a couple things, just an answer to Councilor Orlando's question about amalgamating that area. So there is a conversation between CSRD, CAO and Mr. Parliament regarding that. That will, as conversations move forward, that will be brought to council depending on where that goes. So just know that they're having those conversations. This fire base is not sure how many millions of dollars proposed.
Approximately 7.5.
Okay, just that round figure. So, and so I think it's a great positive, but as Mr. Black has said, the airport is in city property. So Councillor Orlando or Palmer, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. That's useful information. I think there was sort of a very brief revelation of this during the budget discussion. It wasn't part of that. And I think I had maybe a somewhat visceral response immediately. As to the funding of that, but it's important to understand what the project is. And I think Councillor Orlando's question is very, very relevant as well, as I think was stated at that time, because there will be a demand, and we can anticipate a demand of other residents. And my understanding, anecdotally, admittedly, that in the regional district that there's water concerns about the water users in there. I think there's multiple concerns. I'm hearing that anecdotally, but from fairly reliable sources. So my first question, if I get to the real meat of it, is why is the province, this is a provincial facility, Ministry of Forests, so why would not the province be paying for this the whole amount? And I don't know if there's I'm wondering that's kind of the fundamental question.
Yeah. Do you want to comment, Mr. Black?
Sure, Your Worship. To Councillor Palmer, the province does not have the ability to fund projects like this outside of their footprint. And so in order to achieve success in building this project and providing adequate fire protection for this facility, the province had to go and find another way of funding it. And so in support of that, they did apply for and get a grant of $400,000 for that water project. And the CSRD and the city agreed to $100,000 approximately for their portion of this project in support of this big facility. So that is the reason that we are paying a portion, CSRD is paying a portion, and the province has come with a grant for that portion of the water main.
That we may be paying a portion. So on we've recently did the water master plan. I believe that was adopted in late last year, correct? I think it was late last year, maybe November, December. This came before the adoption. So is this included in there? It was the water master plan referred to, like, did we refer to that in the implications of the installation of this new line?
To Mayor and Council, the project itself is not specifically called out in the water master plan, as the master plan just deals in gross numbers. The expansion of this facility is going to provide or impact the city very minor. The only thing that this is going to provide is domestic water and fire protection. All other services, filling the plains with retardant, water, et cetera, et cetera. We've been very clear with the province and the ministry that we are not providing drinkable water for any other thing. So it's very specific to the building use only. And the water master plan is built upon the expected build out of the community over a 20-year cycle. And so I don't look at a specific project as an impact to the overall city, but a cumulative impact for development overall. And so in a net picture, this is extremely small in consideration of the growth considered in the OCP and the water master plan, which is going to be about 8,000 more people. And so less than 1% impact.
So to Mayor, so on the design of this and the decision-making on the size of the pipe, isn't taking into consideration the possibility of the demand that I'm suggesting is inevitable coming from the regional area that in this discussion. So that hasn't been considered in the design of this, the water sizing. The sizing for this is specifically for the fire center and nothing else. Is that correct?
That is correct. And so the expansion of the municipal boundaries has not been contemplated as a part of this project, as it's beyond the scope of this consideration. However, a 300 millimeter water main is a big transmission pipe. And so it's not likely that upsizing of this pipe would be required, as the loop would probably come from RMR down south and then come back to the airport. And that looping system would then provide adequate water pressure and supply for domestic services should be expanded.
Sorry, I mean, because I was just thinking about something else. So you're suggesting in the future there may be a loop that goes around to this 12-inch line?
That would be in my opinion, and at this point with the limited data that we have, looping the system is absolutely critical, and that would have to come from basically RMR and connect back to the airport
Right.
through the south.
And then I think my final question, and I'll have some comments, is the timelines for the construction of the building. When do they plan on starting? Is this for 2024 kind of thing?
The province is actually keen on starting this year. They're hoping to occupy by next spring. It's a very dynamic schedule.
Yeah, we're used to that. So, council, through the mayor, council. There's some things that just don't add up to me. First of all, why are we, the taxpayers within the city, subsidizing a provincial function, firefighting, that is for the province as a whole? So it's a question. Why are we doing it? Why are we subsidizing for this multi-million-dollar project? To me, it seems, very strange. So the province is coming cap in hand to Little Revelstoke And this is quite frankly, for an amount that's a drop in the bucket of a firefighting helicopter. They'll drop this kind of money like that during the fire season. So that it's small for the province, it's big for it's approaching 1% for us. And then when you add the regional district, and I'm not going to question, I don't think it's anything to do with staff, but I just question this idea, that they had to go out for a grant. So this is the province of British Columbia that's coming to the city of Revelstoke into the regional district asking for a grant. This is backwards. Quite frankly, I don't think they need this money, and I don't know why they're doing it. And so, yeah, there might be some regulations within the department or whatever, but the province can make those decisions very, very easily. And then it's being suggested that, okay, well, this is just coming from our Economic Opportunities Fund, but that is actually robbing from real economic opportunities for the city of Revelstoke. I'll leave it at that. I just, we'll see where it goes, but there is no way that I can support this without some better explanation that makes sense. This does not make sense to me. On the timelines, we're looking, this is going back to September that came to knowledge of the city. It was leaked out a little bit during the budget thing. There was concern, and now we're asked to, okay, do it. Don't worry about it, just do it. And I have a disdain for that kind of pressure as well. So I think probably. Thank you, Mayor Scholes.
All right, thank you. Councilor Charity, do you have a comment?
I do. I didn't have my hand up though. Through your worship to Director Black, when development like this happens from the province, who usually picks up the cost of upgrading services?
Typically, it would be the developer that would be on the hook for that.
Another question to your worship, to whoever knows the answer. The $7.5 million facility, how many firefighters is this going to employ?
30?
I believe the number is currently 30. In the future, we'll have capacity for up to 80.
And those are going to be local though. How many of those do you think would be local?
That's a question. So I had an addendum that Quentin that we were going to walk in today that had some economics in it.
I believe it is linked in the report.
Which I unfortunately do not have in front of me,
It's the last
but the province, I did
Yes.
ask that they provide some economic data for us. And so how many people would be here, what they expected. And my apologies, I do not have that in front of me, and I'm just thankful that I remembered.
Jillian's going to share it now.
Okay. Ms. Rousseau is sharing. And then Councilor Charity, you have a follow-up with that before I go back to Councilor?
Yeah, the reason I was asking is, there is economic development here, and I'd hate to lose a $7.5 million facility and all the jobs attached to it, as well as the upgrades at the airport, over 100K. So I just wanted to add that in.
Great, thank you for that. Councilor Palmer, you have a comment?
Yeah, I really don't think that, over this tiny amount for the province, that's any real risk. And just a little bit of history, there used to be 2 fire bases within the area, this one. And there used to be one just outside, I believe it was just outside the city boundary, where it's become a squatter's haven right now. And where there was ample water near BC Hydro, near the dam.
Yep.
So that there used to be a base that shut down for amalgamating, and they built, did extensive expansion on the facility at that time. I think you're aware of that. And so there's been a long history of the employees being here. On the economic development, yeah, we could spin virtually any expenditure into economic development, but that's a big stretch on this one.
Okay. Any Councilor Stickners?
A question through the chair to Mr. Black. just to clarify for everybody that's listening in the room, the water services that are going to be provided to this facility is going to be metered, right? Province isn't exempt from that payment. So there is going to be the potential for recouping some of the cost through that. If I'm not mistaken, is that?
That is correct.
Okay. And then the other thing I just wanted to say too is, if we turn on the news right now, we look at what's happening in Alberta. We look at the fires that are raging out of control down there. I mean, I think, to echo what Matt Cherry said, or Councilor Cherry said about, the economic benefits. I think there's economic benefits. I think there's social benefits. I think it's the kind of neighbors that we want in our communities. So I'm all in favor of this. So thank you, Your Worship. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments from council? Councillor Palmer, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So it's just a rebuttal to that. So this is coming at the cost of taxpayers within the city of Revelstoke for a provincial function. And yes, the fire stuff, I don't question that. I mean, anybody question about the need of the facility? But more and more, the province is downloading. And so where does this stop? Our responsibility for a provincial function. So why are we subsidizing this provincial function for this tiny amount for the province, almost 1% for our Revelstoke residents equivalent? Yes, there is a responsibility, and I suspect the province will, proceed with this. And for us to even have this sort of, there is that bothersome part about the speed of this decision making. We should have had this discussion much, much earlier. It should have started with the city before it went to economic development, because it's our infrastructure. But it went to that function and then to the CSRD, and now we're the last ones kind of being pushed into this. So I don't question the rationale about how important fire services, because there has been cutback, but now is the municipalities going to start picking up the tab for a provincial function?
Mr. Black, comment, is there a payback scheme for what's going into this sort of thing?
From a purely as a utility, no. Staff is of the opinion that the new development and property taxes and revenue from wages, the follow on from shopping, purchasing of equipment, perhaps rentals, houses by staff coming here is going to outweigh this cost significantly. And in fact, with the ability to charge per usage of water, it will be a net zero to the city for the utility and a net positive to the community with the facility.
Okay, thanks for that comment. Any other comments from council? Councillor Orlando.
Yeah, Your Worship, I have a few questions. So the first one, through Your Worship, to Director Black. I think maybe I'm not picking up what you're putting down when you were talking about the $400,000 that the province has provided. So does that mean to say there's some sort of an offset, like they put it over here, but then we take it out over here, we're getting it anyway? Sorry, if you could just clarify that.
Through Your Worship. So the province does not have the ability to fund infrastructure off of their property itself. So offsite infrastructure, they cannot fund through their provincial laws, guidelines, bylaws. In order to facilitate this discussion with the CSRD and the city, MOF said, we can't do this, but let's see what we can do. So they went out and found $400,000 through a grant from the province to support this project. The cost estimate for this water main project is about $600,000. In support of that, the CSRD and the COR will contribute that remainder up to $100,000 per partner. The rest of the 400 or the remainder $400,000 comes from the province to support that infrastructure offsite.
Follow up, Council.
Yeah, just a second question through your worship. So to be clear on the actual physical infrastructure, this pipe is going to this building, and we've received assurances that other functions out there at the airport are not going to be supported through this water. And that is, to be clear, just because I'm focused on the policy question, that so for example, the buildings at the airport are not going to be looking into this. Like the existing hangars and other kinds of building, or are they already serviced by the city? And where are they located? Are they located in the city? So I'm just trying to sort that out.
So I believe there was an attachment to this report that did show a proposed layout. The existing 2-inch galvanized pipe goes to the site and it services the city's emergency operations center, the airport operations center, the hangar, and the forestry office. This new pipe will connect to that existing network at the airport. So all of those facilities will continue to be served by the city, but we did not have adequate fire protection for a new facility. So that is the big driver for building this main, and that is to provide fire protection to the airport itself. In the future, as development may or may not occur, we would then have the ability to upsize pipe as needed in order to service additional facilities at the airport. So it is serviced, we'll continue to service it. We do not have adequate fire protection now. With this project, we will have adequate fire protection for that new facility, which is required by building code, and we will be able to expand in the future should that need be come about. But that pipe size is the minimum that is, through our modeling, that will provide the fire protection that is needed. Hence 300 millimeters.
Okay.
Follow-up, Councilor?
Your worship, thank you. One last question. Through financial mechanisms, do we have the ability in the future to recoup this cost? So for example, if additional properties within that area sought to be included in the city in order to access the water, such as existing CSRD properties, and I was looking at the zoning map trying to figure out where everything is, I'm just trying to piece it all together, or other development applications such as, new buildings at the airport, or if somebody wants a new hangar for their helicopters, can we charge them retroactively for their costs for this? So basically, I'm wondering if there's going to be a cost recovery argument in the future for this $100,000.
Latecomer fees?
Yeah, staff have not considered a latecomer for this, to offset these costs. It might be something that is worth considering. We have time until such time as occupancy of this building in order to bring forward something for council to consider, should that be a direction that you chose. It is, in a bigger picture, the facilities here are representative. It's going to be a very small amount just to service the airport itself. Again, it's for fire protection. If the municipal boundaries were to expand, then that would be the real mechanism to recover those costs, because we would be adding numerous properties to the city and tax base.
Thank you.
Councilor Staples, then Councilor Palmer.
Yes, thank you, your worship. Through the chair to Mr. Black, you keep on saying fire protection. So is it my understanding that this new building that's going to be built for the tune of $7.5 million, that'll be sprinklered or standpipe, or what's the fire protection service that's going to go in there that needs this water line?
We cannot provide the volume of water required by the fire department in order to fight a fire at that location, given the distance from large diameter pipe. So the diameter of the pipe, which is needed and required in order to provide adequate fire protection to this facility, and that's pressure and volume.
Okay. Just because earlier, I think Councilor Orlando had mentioned something about hangars being sprinkler, but that doesn't really make sense to me because of the fire load from the helicopter fuel. You're not going to have a sprinkler in there to put that out, right? Like, that's a phone-based operation, not a water-based operation. Great, thank you, appreciate that.
Councilor Palmer?
Yeah, so just follow-up question on the engineering side of this. So it sounds like there's been very minimal engineering design. Basically, it's a pipe size that allows a float, but there's been very minimal sort of engineering consideration. I'm just affirming basically what you said before as far as expansion to the regional district area. And so who's picking up that? Or is that just being done in-house or, you know, with that?
So, through your worship, Councilor Palmer, so the Ministry of Forests consultant took our water model, and in order to understand the size of the pipe required to provide the fire protection, used our water model to determine the pipe size.
Mhm.
That is all we have done for the water pipe size.
Right.
Expanding the system is not part of this program and was not considered.
Right. Okay.
From an engineering perspective, this sort of linear infrastructure is very simple, as you know. So we don't need high-level engineering drawings. As a matter of fact, because council authorized staff to use a master service agreement with 2 contractors locally to provide construction services, this would be one of the projects that would fall into that program. And so we don't need to do any more engineering other than waving our hands in the field and a cost estimate that one of the MSE proponents will give to us, and that will be the basis of our cost estimates and construction costs.
All right, follow-up?
Yes. As stated, I'm still opposed to the motion on the table, as stated before. I have concerns on we'll have a follow-up motion depending where this goes, but I'm absolutely opposed to this. Without bringing this back to the drawing board and understanding the full implications, including future expansion and in better understanding why the province doesn't pay for stuff that's their responsibility, in my opinion. So I will have a follow-up motion regarding the sizing, and I'll speak to that at that time.
Councilor Chair.
Thanks, your worship. To all the council, I'd just like to remind you all that in our OCP, it has stated that there is no future boundary expansion. So if we've danced around that conversation a few times here, that is not what's been recommended in our OCP. If you guys would like to have that conversation, you know, this probably isn't the time or place.
Correct.
But that shouldn't be, I don't feel like that should be a reason why we either vote for or against this.
Okay, any other comment on the motion on the table? Councilor Orlando.
Yeah, your worship, I just want to echo Councillor Palmer's concern. For example, council needs complete information or as much as possible. If the plan is to build this summer and in the next couple of months, and I feel that we're being put on the spot. Also, it was mentioned that there's other discussions going on about amalgamation of the airport. I don't know about what the direction of that is, and I would like to know those things. I just want to register a general concern that we be kept in the loop and know what's going on. I think that in the long run, we will encounter more difficult conversations and anxiety from council if we are not appraised of what is happening around us. And especially, just a personal thing and a general comment, not on this one specifically, but if I have a feeling that key information is being withheld prior to a decision being made, then that makes it really difficult for me to go ahead with that, because I was voted as a representative of the residents, and I need to have complete information, as complete as possible. So the timeline, I don't, Councilor Palmer mentioned September. I don't know if that's something you mentioned. I was aware of this again, like it came up at a budget meeting or something like that recently, but that is going to be, I guess, from my perspective, much easier if I'm aware of these ones going on. So what's happening at the airport, I don't know. And I need to, it would make it much easier if I knew that. So that's just a general comment there. Thank you.
Okay, so just, Ms. Braun, I'll just weigh in and then get to you. So there's been no formal conversations on amalgamation of any of this part. There's been no comments from community members as to, geez, are we going to get water out in our area? There's been no formal conversations between CSRD and the city regarding whether we should amalgamate or not amalgamate, what's going to happen with the airport in the future, all those sorts of things. There's been all kinds of surmises sort of thing as to what was going to happen once this facility gets built. So the whole idea of what we're talking about today is to service this facility so that they can operate something there because the water line carries on to the airport. So in essence, it will be serviced because this water line's carrying on. Are we carrying on this big line right to the airport or just to this facility, Mr. Black, just for clarification?
It will go to the airport and it will connect to the existing 2-inch system on site.
Right.
But the pipe size that's required for fire protection will be located near the facility because that's where it is needed.
Perfect. All right. And then Ms. Braun, you wanted to weigh in.
Just to add a comment, this has come up relatively quickly, I understand. I've been apprised of this conversation fairly recently and provided some of my economic development input into it. However, it is on the agenda for the Economic Development Commission next week.
Okay. All right. Good. All right. I'll ask one more time. So you have a follow-up, Councillor Orlando, and then Councillor Palmer.
Your worship, just a question. I don't know if it was Councillor Palmer or Director Black, and this is a question through the chair who made the comment, but there was discussion earlier in this discussion of this item regarding looping the system to go down, I guess, Westerberg Road. I mean, that's a long-term goal. And just sorry, again, the zoning map, I've got it on my phone here, but it's too small. Would that include passage through any areas outside of city limits?
Through your worship, we have no plans at this time to extend the pipe beyond the airport.
Okay.
The discussion was, if the city were to expand its boundaries, how would we service those areas? If that was the case, and council through changing the OCP, directed staff to expand the city boundary, in my opinion, the way to operate the water system properly would be to extend the pipe from RMR back to Westerberg, up Airport Road, and connect to this pipe.
Yeah.
I have no budget, I have no drawings, I have nothing that indicates that that is the case. Top of my head, that's how I would look at providing water service to that area, should that ever come.
All right. Good. Councillor Palmer, one last comment.
Thank you, Mayor Souls. So the question about the OCP and is it important discussion? So it's stated by Councillor Cherry that in our OCP that there will be no boundary expansion. And I don't recall that, and I'm just wondering if the planner is on that. Just want verification of
Mr.
that.
Simon, are you available to make comment?
And if there's any sort of qualifiers that might be the active versus, because we have had recent expansions and there has been other interest, I know, from developers of coming into the city.
Mr. Simon, do you have comment regarding OCP and expansion of our property?
Yes, through your worship to all of council. It's section 2.5 of the official community plan. It's a high level statement, and what it reads is no further expansion of the urban growth boundary shall be supported should the community grow at a rate higher than expected in a centralized development model not be sufficient to accommodate growth. As part of the implementation of this OCP, the city will review and determine whether boundary expansions are necessary to accommodate growth. So it's really looking at, if we had a developer come to the table and say, we want to expand 50 acres to the south to enable more development, that policy or that provision would need to be revisited. If it's something that is minor in nature and it's generally consistent with the intent of the OCP, then it's unlikely to trigger an OCP amendment, but obviously we'd have to look into that further. But the general intent is to not expand the urban growth boundary. And with this type of proposal, if there was some type of expropriate or some type of annexation included, it is not like it's expanding our urban growth boundary and allowing, hundreds of acres of developable land into city limits now. So does that make sense? That's just general intent.
Great, thank you for that comment. Follow-up, Councilor Palmer, regarding that
Yeah,
statement.
thank you, Mayor Souls. So in this scenario, which has happened in the past and continues even to this day, that the regional district, an area, requests to come in to facilitate growth, urban growth, would that be consistent with the OCP as it's written?
Through your worship to Councillor Palmer, we really need to understand the specifics of the proposed request and do a detailed analysis of it. Again, the intent is to say we want to grow within our boundaries. If you annex 4 properties into the city to address a servicing constraint, or 12 properties into the city like Thomas Brook, those properties aren't going to accommodate a substantial form of development. What the intent with this policy was to not see large expansions into the CSRD to accommodate additional urban growth. Basically, the OCP says, here's what we envision for what we anticipate for our increase in population. We can accommodate that within our current boundary of the city. We don't need to expand that boundary to accommodate growth. So it really gets behind what the intent of the boundary expansion would be.
Yeah, so basically, as many of the statements in the OCP, it's qualified statements depending on the situation. And so I would suggest that the possibility of those properties being amalgamated or being annexed into the city is a high possibility because of the request, because of the water situation. So I think it's a very relevant question. So depending on where this discussion goes, I do plan on putting a motion on the table that the city spend motion's not going on right now because we have a motion on the table, but just in anticipation so that we understand this looping possibility, because that discussion's been going on for decades. Decade at least, this finger that goes of the regional district. Mayor Souls, you're very familiar with that. I think anybody intuitively says, yeah, that probably belongs. And yet we've had council policies in the past that we don't try and push the rural areas, but like Thomas Brook, the request because it makes sense and it's in the best interest. And my concern with this pipe is, I've expressed the concern about us subsidizing the province, but then there is the design. So as the engineer said, well, this is the minimum size for fire flows, and we haven't done the modeling for a possible loop. And I think that we need to understand that so that we don't dig this up in 6 years to upgrade it to a 350 pipe instead of a 300 pipe. And it's very clear that we don't know what that possible future consideration is. So at the very minimum, let's spend a little bit of money to make sure that we do the design work. But that'll be a question after this, after you call this question.
Any further comments on the motion on the table? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of this motion? Opposed? Note that Councillor Palmer, Councillor Orlando are opposed. Balance of council is in favor. This motion is passed. Thank you. Councillor Palmer, you have comment.
Yeah, I just have a follow-up motion that staff I'd like to make a comment beforehand. I do hope somebody seconds this. That staff engage with our engineers to do the modeling for a potential loop and water supply for that area that's surrounded by the city property. Is that fine, corporate officer? You know what I'm trying to say?
I do, but could you please be more specific?
So motion to
Yeah.
do.
Design.
To service that area of CSRD?
Yeah, maybe Mr. Black can help me. So you know what I'm saying, because there's the questions about that looping and even going around. So I think there should be a question to our engineers so that we fully understand that we're not undersizing this pipe. Sorry, I'm talking like a counselor.
You are a counselor.
I know. I'm making fun of myself.
That's a compliment.
Okay, that staff engage to look at future possible implications of the water line that's going to this facility.
If I might.
Yeah, please.
Through your worship, that staff develop a concept plan to review the opportunity to service the unincorporated areas south of the airport, or in the unincorporated areas linking Revelstoke Resort and the airport.
Okay, and is that understood from saying that the modeling's included, some modeling? Yeah.
Conceptual design.
So, Ms. Moore, you have your hand up. Do you need to say something about this before I ask for a seconder?
Through your worship, yes, I just wanted to confirm, and Mr. Black might be able to respond to this. I'm wondering if this motion may have a budget implication followed with that, and whether or not staff would be directed to include this into the next budget cycle. I'm just not quite confident based off of the discussions right now, how much that will cost.
Mr. Palmer, you want to make
Yeah,
comment?
I don't think this is a big ticket item.
I don't either. However, it is an unfunded request at this time, and so council should be, I would suspect it'll be under $20,000 at most for this.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a seconder for the motion?
Sorry, Mr. Black, could you repeat that motion, please?
He was talking like a counselor.
That staff be directed to develop a conceptual design scenario for the incorporation of the lands south and west of the resort and connecting Airport Road to the airport from a water modeling perspective.
Okay. Okay. Seconder for the motion. Councilor Orlando, any further discussion on the motion? You want to speak to it, Councilor Palmer?
Yeah, I'll just speak to it. Briefly, so really, I'm just trying to mitigate any kind of errors that we make at this level. So now that we've committed to subsidize the province, that we don't undersize this pipe, and for whatever future, and that could include the airport. There may be some, that would be an argument for economic development, quite frankly, if there was some improvements to the airport where we need more water. So that's the intent, and I think it's fairly straightforward. Thank you,
Chair.
Thanks, your worship. Through your worship to Director Black. Can you comment on this water pipe, this size, how many homes could be connected in the area or future growth at the airport?
I could not provide any real number right at this time.
Thanks. What if I rephrase that to say, does this pipe size just hit the minimum requirements for the triggered building that are triggered by the building, or is there?
Only for the fire protection. So with volume, we have water to service single family homes. We have volume to service the existing facility. The constraint is the fire protection.
Gotcha.
And so it's fire flow that is key here. And as long as there's no additional industrial, commercial, or institutional development, and you have two fires going on at the same time, the demand for fire protection is, I believe, 225 liters per second for 2 hours or 3 hours. Single family home is, I believe, 125 for 2 hours, liters per second for 2 hours. And so the volume required to fight a fire is extremely large. And that's why the size of the pipe is recommended to be 300 through the modeling. To provide domestic service for residential, typically we would be looking at 6 to 8 inch pipe, so 150 to 200 mil pipe.
Follow up.
No, your worship, I'm just thinking.
Okay, any other comments from other councilors? Councilor Orlando?
A question through your worship. If the resolution were to pass, would there be time for that to come to the table and be determined and actually cause this construction project to put in a different size pipe this summer?
Comment, Mr. Blunt.
Staff are pretty overloaded at this time. Adding additional work is going to cause something else to fall off the table. It's an extremely busy time for us, as you are aware. I would anticipate that in 6 weeks or 8 weeks, we could probably have an answer to that question. And if I might suggest, if this motion passes and council directs staff to proceed with this design work, that we could return to council if the size changes. However, I would recommend that if there's no size changes, that we not burden council with something that is established at this point, unless that is council's directive.
All right, any other councilor statements?
Thank you, your worship. Just quick question for Mr. Black. This design loop that's been proposed by Councilor Palmer, would that only be for any new development, or like what would be the purpose of it at this point?
That would be, it would only apply if council expanded the city boundary to incorporate those properties in the CSRD into the city utilities, taxation based, so water, sewer, all the utilities that would then fall within the city's responsibility. And if that were the case, that would be the driver for expanding the looping of the water system for that future need. At this point in time, there is no need. We were purely speculating, or I was purely speculating as to whether or not, or how I would design something like that. And that looping system provides flow from both directions, which gives you better water pressure and better fire protection. And it keeps the water moving so that you don't end up with stale water in pipes, in which case you have to over-chlorinate. So there's a bunch of other technical things that apply once you start expanding systems like this, which we are not planning on doing.
Follow up, Councilor.
Thanks, your worship. Director Black, you said it would be about 6 to 8 weeks. I think you estimated to have that report back. What is the estimated timeline for this development?
It won't be ready for occupancy until at least next year.
For the pipe going in?
The pipe won't need to be operational until they have occupancy. However, I'd hope to build it. I'd hope to build it this year.
Timeline with your hopes?
This coming construction season.
For the next 6 to 8 weeks, I guess is my question.
So construction of the pipe is simple. We've already talked to our two contractors with the master service agreements, and so we can accommodate it. It's already planned. If we choose not to do it, but we've already established that we are going to do that. So I'm hopeful to build that this year. The question is, do we consider upsizing the pipe for future need if needed?
Perfect. I appreciate that. I just hate to see staff time get wasted if pipe's already in the ground by the time it's done.
I can assure you that I will not proceed with construction of this pipe if in fact it is the improper size. I have high confidence that we're in good shape.
Any further discussion on the motion on the table? So, Councilor Orlando.
Yeah, your worship, I just wanted to speak to the motion, and I guess I'm not gonna support it just in the sense that I feel like the expansion would likely be driven by an application from somebody who's proposing something big down there at one point, at which point we can put the costs onto a large part of it onto them. I kind of think staff are busy and they're trying to go ahead with this, although I voted against it. It's not necessarily in opposition to the project at all, just sort of a feeling that it's coming to us a bit last minute and needed a bit more information. But I feel like, yeah, it's just going to be extra work and costs. And it may well mean that we're putting in a pipe that we need to dig up in 7 years. But if that's the case, I'm hoping that that cost will be transferred on to someone else, such as the developer, although that's not, you're never getting full cost recovery, but that's just my thought.
So just on that, to me, I don't think this is a huge exercise. We go to WSP, I'm assuming, because they've got the model. They punch in the numbers. I think it's a pretty easy exercise. And then also on the fiscal responsibility, in economic development, a $1 million project in the future, that's what it'll be, $1 million project that was unnecessary. I think it's quite irresponsible. So I hope I can convince you on that basis. But I really think this goes to WSP. I anticipate the 12-inch is probably adequate. Sorry for having that. Sorry for, and it is based on some experience. But I suspect the 12 inches. But I had spending that little bit of effort to make sure, I think is very important, especially when you're talking close to $1 million project. Responsibility.
All right. Go ahead, Bill, now it's time.
Yeah, Your Worship. Yeah, sorry to belabor this conversation. This one item here. I guess I'm just asking for a yes or no. Can we do this study and we put in a different size pipe before they get going, and it still happens according to their schedule, and it's not a huge inconvenience? Is that possible?
So, Your Worship, yes, it is reasonable. We can ensure that this study is done prior to construction. The crews are city crews that will be doing this, and so under my direction, I can defer, delay as needed in order to ensure that we have additional studies should council direct us to do that.
Thank you.
All right, Councillor Stegner, you had a question?
No, I'm good.
Okay, sir. So I have a gentleman that's just signed on, Jonathan Huggett. Jonathan, are you here with the?
For the in-camera.
Okay, all right, good. All right, so I'm going to call a question on the motion on the table. All those in favor of expanding what Councillor Palmer wanted as far as looking at potential for the future? All those in favor? Note Councillor Luciano, Councillor Palmer, Councillor Orlando are in favor. All those opposed? Note balance of council is opposed. This motion is defeated. All right, we're going to move on to communications. Ministry of Municipal Affairs. We received $3.3 million from Ministry of Municipal Affairs. Any comments on the letter? Councillor Orlando.
Yeah, Your Worship, the letter asks us to follow up. I imagine we are in a matter of due course doing so. I just wanted to reiterate what council sort of requested of Minister Kang when she came to visit and get to know us, and that anything that the Ministry of BC Housing can do to get a shovel in the ground on the Downey Street housing project would be greatly appreciated. We need it, and we need it now. So any letter that goes out, I would like to just place that emphasis that, as staff has said in previous meetings, they're ready they're chomping at the bit to see that permit application and process as quick as possible, and we're ready to get going as soon as they are. And I'd like to see it happen. So yeah.
Thank you for that comment. Any other comments?
Thanks, Rachel. I'm just looking for a little clarification. The funds, are those based on population, or is this? I guess I'm kind of looking for.
I don't recall whether it was based on population. I think it may have something to do with it. But basically, population may be part of that. So. Mr. Black is nodding his head. So,
Perfect.
good.
Thanks.
All right, any other comments on that letter? Seeing none, moving on to BC Hydro annual report. Any comments on BC Hydro's report? Seeing none, moving on to Heritage Advisory Commission meeting minutes. Councillor Cherry, you sit on that board. Any comment?
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Latest, sorry, apologies. Latest Heritage Advisory Commission meeting. We looked at an application for a carriage suite on a property and removing the garage. Although the commission was partially interested in it, I believe there may be the application is going to be changing, so I don't really want to make too many comments.
All right, okay. And then let's move on to Advisory Planning Commission meeting minutes. So you sit on that as well.
That is also me. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend that meeting as we were all at the SILGA conference. I have emailed the group to see if they have any comments to be made. I don't have anything to add other than what's in the minutes.
Okay, good. Any other comments from other council? Seeing none, moving on to questions from the press. Ms. Rousseau, any questions?
No questions from the press, Your Worship.
All right, thank you. And I will ask someone to make a motion to go in camera pursuant to section 90.1 A, E, and K of the community charter. Moved by Councillor Devlin, seconded by Councillor Lucian. All in favor? Motion's carried. We'll go in camera momentarily. Let's take a 5-minute break and we'll resume in camera.